Okay, and here we are, another episode of the True Gamers Chronicles. Again, I'm Dreams. I'm going to give you guys my insights and perspectives on how to play this game. All right, let's get into it. So as you can see, this video will be about a tier chart for legendary combat survivors. So when you think about the survivors on this game, what makes a survivor better than another one is a combination of their stats and their skills. Now, if you wanted to create a character with the best skills, you would want a survivor that is going to hit multiple crews, that does a lot of damage, one that might increase your attack given or decrease the amount of damage you take, and then skills that will happen for multiple turns. Basically, when two formations attack each other, it's like a turn-based system. Whoever has the highest speed goes first. Usually the speeds are the same until you get to T10 or unless you have Ezekiel. After that, it's whoever attacks gets to go first. So if two people have the same speed, whoever attacks goes first, and the game plays out pretty much a simulation of attacks based off of stats and skills. So again, the way that this tier chart was made, basically skills kind of rule the game. If you're anything like me, you just never paid attention to the skills at first because it requires reading, and we're playing a video game, and who wants to read during a video game? But at the end of the day, skills rule. So I did a basic tier chart in the beginning just based off of pure battle power. But now that I've incorporated skills, this tier chart has changed quite a bit. All right, so first tier is S tier or God tier. Really, Ezekiel is the best, has the best stats, has the best skills. Not all the best skills, but he has the criteria needed to have pretty good, decent skills. So, but the fact that he has the most stats and that he can carry more troops than anyone and that his skills are pretty decent definitely puts him at the top. Next up, we have Yumiko. Or I should say, next up is the A tier. So these are the top tier survivors that you can get. They're really in the same category. It's hard to put one above the other, but there are some instances where I say one character is definitely better than the others. So as far as Yumiko and Magna go, I would say Yumiko is probably the best one here in this A tier. She just has multiple attributes in her skills that make her slightly better than the rest of the people in A tier. She has a skill that helps increase damage. Oh, I also forgot to mention. So a skill is only as good as how often it hits. So this tier chart takes into consideration that there are skills that happen 30 to 40% of the time, and to me that's not reliable, so they'll automatically cancel those out. And just skipping ahead, you'll see a lot of strong characters in D tier that you would say, hey, these are strong characters, but because their skills don't hit enough for them to be reliable, that's partly why they're down there. So again, how often the skill hits is very important. And when it comes to Yumiko, she has a skill that hits 70% of the time. In this game, that's the highest percentage any skill will hit. And on top of that, she just has those elements I mentioned before about what makes a good skill good. She has one that hits multiple crews. She has a skill that does high damage. She has a skill that takes multiple turns. So that's why she's there, and followed right up by Magna, who has similar attributes or similar effectiveness of her skills, where she also will have also has a skill that hits multiple times, hits multiple turns, and has different status effects that help you out in battle. Next up is Next up is Rosita and Abraham. Now, Rosita I put above Abraham just because they both have similar skills. With the skills that Rosita has, her damage output is slightly higher. She also has a better crew skill. So her attack, she can raise it 30%. And I believe Abraham raises health 30%. So, I mean, they're the same there. But Rosita does more damage because she has higher stats. So I put Rosita ahead of Abraham, but they're pretty much the same. Like for Rosita's skill, she does 162 damage to 3 enemy crews, whereas Abraham does 194 damage to 3 crews for 2 turns. Rosita does it for 3 turns, so that's why I put Rosita ahead of Abraham. Now we have Pamela. Now these are just my current survivors, and Pamela's very hard to get, and that is another thing to take into consideration, but I'll talk about that later. Pamela, whenever she's max, well, one reason Pamela's at the end is because her skills are only effective if she has sharpshooters. And much of this game is predicated on people building up melee. So by the time you get T10 sharpshooters, it's probably not that effective because people will probably have already gotten T10 melee. So, but anyway, she's at the end because she's still strong. But her skills are only really helpful if you have sharpshooters in your crew. So she makes S tier because she has skills that hits multiple crews. Skill that hits multiple crews, it goes multiple turns. This one also increases your evade up to 20% when it's max. So that's a skill. That's an attribute that helps you out. And then there is the 75% chance to trigger a rampage. Rampages are very, very helpful as well because they usually hit multiple crews. All right, so moving on to B tier. B tier is still pretty good. They're missing an element or two where they don't hit as many crews or they don't do as many damage. Mostly they just lack one element from the A tier. So we look at Governor. Governor is definitely first because he carries the most troops. He also has a 50% chance of one of his skills happening. He has a 60% chance of another skill happening that also reduces the damage you take for multiple turns. So he's probably right there between top B, bottom A, but I'll put him in the B tier just for that. Then we have Glenn, who has an attack or a skill that goes multiple turns, and does pretty decent damage, but he also reduces the amount of damage you take. So I definitely would put him second. Then we got Dwight and Negan there at the end. That's probably blasphemy to put Dwight ahead of Negan, but Dwight has Rampage, and it spans 2 turns, so that does a lot of damage. Where Negan just has damage to 1 crew and increases it looks like the attack damage that you can deal out with 2 other crews on your own squad. So pretty straightforward there with those 4 guys. All right, so for C tier, it starts off with Morgan. Now the main thing about this C tier is that most of these guys are pretty much the same. It's hard to really put one above the other, but in the beginning, I definitely give a slight edge to Morgan. He has a skill that does damage for multiple turns to 1 crew. He also increases your attack by 20%, so that's another attribute there of a good skill. And then he also has a 50% chance of taking the damage of the other 2 crews. So if you were to put him with someone that has bad defense for whatever reason, he can offset that. Next up would be Beta. Beta has a high crew attribute skill where he raises the health 33%. He also does damage to 1 crew multiple turns, and then he also decreases the damage by half for the first 2 turns. So that's extremely helpful. And I would definitely put him right there with Morgan, maybe slightly behind, just because he does damage for 1 less turn. Okay, next up would be Lydia and Michonne. Now, Lydia has a skill that increases the defense of your crew by 25%, and that's going to be lower than Michonne's, who increases the health by 30%. However, Lydia's attack does more damage and it does it more turns than Michonne's. So Lydia has a skill that does 336% damage to 1 crew for each turn for 2 turns, while Michonne has a skill that does 323 damage to 1 crew within the first 3 turns. So on top of that, Lydia also can take 10% damage for 2 crews, even though that only lasts 1 turn. That's extremely helpful. So Lydia, I think I will put definitely above Michonne, and Michonne rounds out the end of this C tier. Now, D tier, like I said, if you take into consideration that everyone has skills that hit 30 to 45% of the time, that is all these characters. The only thing that really separates them is basically their base stats at max. So Alpha has the best stats at max, and she's also a top tier legendary character where she's going to add additional 30%, 33% to your attack, to the crew's attack, which is helpful. And that's why she's above Rick, who adds just 30% to the attack. But the way that these ones are definitely in order of best to worst, because it's pretty simple. Like, they all have skills, and if they hit, yeah, it's great. But because it's 30 to 45% chance of hitting, is definitely something you don't want to bet on. If you won because of their skills, it's almost like a miracle. So Alpha, just base stats and what she brings to the crew, puts her at first. Rick, same thing, all the way down with Shane, Jesus, Princess, Holly, and John. So John, definitely worst character, worst legendary combat survivor here on this list. He just does the least. But there you have it. That is my tier chart. Again, S tier, untouchable, absolute best, cannot lose. A tier is pretty much where you're going to want to focus your money, focus your gold fragments that you could turn into anything. You have B tier, where you can't go wrong with them. Also, I will be doing another video probably based off of chemistry. That way, maybe do one on what is the best teams, what is the best formations, because just because they have chemistry together doesn't mean that you can't offset that by another character skill. And I've been playing around with formations for a little bit, so definitely looking forward to doing that video. Hopefully, if you guys have any questions, comments, please leave it down below. Please like and subscribe to the video, to the channel. It's been fun. I'll catch you guys next time. All right.